lot of activity around town this weekend, so thank you for being here. It's a very special day for exploring exciting texts because it's our 25th event. Yes. So exploring exciting texts started in 2017. It was started by Chanakya Vyas, who is the director of Indian Ensemble. So over 2 years, the title is exactly, what the event is. It is an exploration of exciting texts. It has also been themes that we find exciting explored through a particular text. And over 25 events, this space has become one where we meet and we talk about a certain question, an idea that arises from the text of the evening. And text could be, whatever we imagine it. It has been oral history, it has been song, it's been performance, it's been text messages, any form of text. Since July 2019, which was 5 months ago, we started looking specifically at alternative histories. So looking at the different forms in which history is documented, looking for different forms of archival. And in that context, I think today we're looking at medical texts as an archive of how we understand the female body. Because also medical texts are an archival of our understanding of the female body, and that directly impacts the healthcare that we receive. Ayesha Susan Thomas is an applied theater practitioner who works primarily at the creative intersections of education, gender, and sexuality. And for the last several months, her research has centered around how the female body is written about in medical textbooks, and what are the consequences of that on the healthcare that we receive. So we've invited her to share her research, and the question that we keep returning to time and again is that of the myth of the female virgin. Now, essentially that myth causes us to see the female body as an object, and the body becomes a site for violence. And given that we have an understanding of what that means and what those implications are for us, the question also that we're looking at today is, what is the future of the female body? Ayesha, over to you.
Nana, thank you, Raghu. Okay, so just before we begin, I thought since we're a nice, small, good-sized crowd, we could go around, and if each of you could tell me what brings you to this event. So your name, and what about this event made you want to be here this evening today? And that tells me where and how to pitch what I'm about to talk about. Okay, so we'll do that. After that, we'll do a really small little activity, followed by me talking for some time, and then we'll break off into discussion. Okay? So I think we just pass this around. Just go with your name and what brings you here today.
Hi, my name is Arya. I'm a student in Christ University. And the topic itself was exciting enough, and I consider myself a feminist, so this is something that excited me, and I attended. Yes.
Hi, I'm Sneha. So yeah, the heading looked very interesting, and curiosity is basically why I'm here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rohit. I hate the way women are objectified and how we are pretty okay with it, whether it is the songs in Bollywood or the way they are in our textbooks or whatever. So I want to learn more about it so that I can be more aware of my own prejudices and biases and ignorances. So it's just that. So hoping that I'll get one step further.
Thank you, Rohit.
Hi, I'm Anisha, and the heading is amazing, and that's what made me want to come. But also, I've had my own struggles with the healthcare system, especially with women's health, and I thought this would be a cool way to know more about where that comes from without having to read the textbooks.
Hi, I'm John. So these kind of subjects normally is not spoken widely in our societies. So it has been kept as a myth. So these type of bold topics to like get it in the public, it's more important. So I'm very keen to learn this.
Hi, I'm Shashank Garg. I basically work at the intersection of technology and public health. And certainly this was very exciting and thought-provoking, I would say, provocative. And I just wanted to find out what it's all about. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Isha. I wish Shashank had said that I brought him along. I'm a medical teacher. I was at St. John's for donkey's years, and I'm a pathologist. So I'm hoping at the end of it, you would take it to medical schools. That's where you need them.
That's the goal, yes. Thank you, Isha.
Hi, I'm Sindhu. I got to know about this exactly 15 minutes ago. Heard the title and said, that's just great. We don't talk about women as much as we should, and therefore.
Yeah, I'm here with Sindhu and Devi, and again, got to know about this 15 minutes back. But after reading the title, again, struggles with dealing with the health issues and stuff. So definitely, this is something that needs to be talked about more, and women need to be talked to openly, and especially when they're going through stuff that involves their reproductive health. That's terribly lacking. Women definitely struggle with if they've got reproductive health problems, and it's a total struggle to find, just empathetic advice, help, even care, even nursing care. Damn tough.
Description, and also the fact that it's so hard to find a non-judgmental gynecologist even in urban India, and so I could really relate to this. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Alice from St. John's. Since I'm working in community medicine, this may be useful for me to know more and do something to the community.
And Alice is specially here because there's a huge event in St. John's today, and she gave that up to be here. So.
Thank you so much, Alice, because it's our benefit that you're here with your perspective of potential healthcare. That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm Smita. I'm here because I think I'm part of that generation which is so used to being ashamed of our bodies, as young, as old. And so for me, this discussion about how we got here and how it can be stopped is really important.
Hi, I'm Prem. So, of course, I'm here also because I know the whole process, but I think what is interesting is the fact that not just in medicine, but in the entire part of science, including medicine and pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth, I think gender has been ignored. Of course, this is a slightly different topic, but I think it's very interesting.
Thank you, Prem.
Hi, I'm Manjula. This is a very important and a useful thing for us to learn new things in this subject. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, hi, I am Kiran. Today I am also interested to learn and understand the topic.
Hi, I'm Deepika. I work with rural women communities, and I always use a gender lens to look at things, and which is why this event seemed like a great place to be.
Hi, I'm Antara. I have worked with women's organization for some time, and one of our key area was sexual violence against women, and that is something that got me here because the subheading which says the reading of the female body in medical textbook was very interesting to me.
Hi, I'm Shyamli. To be honest, Antara got me along, but of course the topic seemed very exciting, and I haven't been a part of a discussion of anything this interesting. So, yeah.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ramani. I am basically an advertising and a marketing man, and I must congratulate you on your headline. And I came here mainly to find out more details about the product, because when the headline is interesting, I'm sure the talk is going to be even more interesting.
Hello, good evening. I'm Mohan. I'm a member of BIC. I had attended a program by the same organization on the Tibetan refugees, and I found that very exciting. And I'm looking forward to a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anirudh. I'm actually here with my friend simply out of curiosity, so yeah.
Hey, I'm Shreya. I'm an architect, and like so many people have already said, it's the title which is super catchy, so kudos on that.
Hi, I'm Neeraj. I'm into medicine, and I'm unlikely to read any medical textbooks, so apart from the title, that is the reason that I'm here.
So you're in medicine?
I'm not in medicine, I'm interested in medicine, and I'm working public health vaguely, so.
Great. You should read the textbooks, they're really interesting.
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha, and I study women's participation in the clean energy sector and entrepreneurship. So I was really fascinated to get another gender lens perspective on, yeah.
My name is Girish. I was just curious about the subject matter. It seemed very interesting.
Hi, I'm Jaya. Curiosity, that's it.
Yeah, I've never attended like a talk like this before, and the subject area, I have no clue about it, so just out of curiosity.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm a graphic designer, but I went to a women's college in the States and very strong feminist, so I was intrigued by the title, and my daughter is planning to be a gender studies major, so I'm here on her behalf.
I'm Melissa, and for me, I think it's a combination of being a woman, working in healthcare communications, and also my experiences with being examined as a woman by the healthcare system.
Hi, I'm Jabin. I'm here because Melissa pulled me here, and I was a bit.
People are here out of duress.
No, when she told me what the talk was going to be about, I was a bit curious to see what is your perspective of the reading of the female body in medical textbooks, because I am a doctor. So let's see what your perspective about this is. Of course, I read the books a long time ago in Bethlehem. Yeah.
My name is Pradeep. I'm as curious as most of them here and struck by the eye-popping title. And looking forward to your talk.
Great, thank you for the eye-popping. The opposite of
Hello, I'm Anna. I'm visiting from California. My new friend Shobha suggested I come, and it sounded interesting. One of the things I do is I work as a sign language interpreter, and often in the medical setting and with domestic violence survivors. So it's all about culture and language. So it sounds very interesting.
I'm Shobha, and I'm a feminist. Increasing gender participation in all aspects of life is a passion of mine. Like Tanya, I went to a women's college, and I'm here to find out how to use language to be inclusive rather than blame and separate.
Hey, I'm Sarah, and like many of you, I'm here because the title sounded so interesting and the topic did too, so I could always learn more about it.
I'm Aditi, and I'm a student, and I'm also really curious about what this session had to say about, so I'm here.
Hi, I'm Shravan. It's been a year since I kind of acknowledged to my wife that I am truly privileged. And the past year has been a journey of self-discovery and also discovering my biases and prejudices. And my increased work in the social space has made me realize that it's not just economic inequality, but by and large, really huge, right now infinite gap between genders, and I'm trying to do my best to see what I can do to evolve in my outlook and work as well.
proud wife. My name is Nisha. I'm here basically because I've been at the receiving end, like so many of you, with judgmental medical health. And as a teenager, even denied myself medical health because medical attention because of the judgment. Now it's a little different. And as a theater maker, I'm hoping to use some of, I don't know, the inspirations from here. I don't know what is possible, but maybe to use performance and the stage as a way to stem this in some way. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ishita. I teach sociology in Mount Carmel College. And for the past semester, I've been teaching medical sociology. So I've been talking about how gender affects doctor-patient relationships, the diagnosis of diseases, the treatment to it. So I'm here basically to get new ideas, new insights, something more that I can enrich my understanding of the subject and help my students out. Yeah.
Hi, myself Debashri. I work as a development professional, worked in various organizations. Currently, I'm working for an organization that works for persons with disabilities. And I keep writing a lot of content which talks about how women with various kind of disability, how adolescent girls with various forms of disabilities face a lot of limitations when it comes to reproductive health or kind of gender-based issues. So I kind of felt interested with the subject, and it will definitely, I come here as a learner to know more about myself and know more about the work that we can do productively. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Rashi, and I have come here for my 12-year-old daughter. She had a lot of questions, and like when I used to ask questions to my mother, she was never able to answer them correctly. So I just want to answer her curiosities properly, like in a technical way, so that she'll understand and she'll appreciate. So I just come for her.
I'm Payal. I work as a special educator, and I'm just here to stay in touch with interesting discussions and ideas.
Hi, I'm Meenakshi, and I'm a sexuality educator as well as a theater of the oppressed practitioner. I just feel that this will feed into a lot of knowledge, which I could use in both the fields, and hence I'm here.
So she and I are colleagues, so we decided to do this together. Just first off, as a Mount Carmel alum, I think it's amazing that you're doing this. It's pretty cool that, I mean, I would have liked that out of my teachers, so good for you. The second thing is, she just quit, but I'm with an organization that works towards prevention of child sexual abuse and works in the field of child rights. So being super empowered by the gynecologists that we work with, this is something that keeps coming up, right? So the gender lens is super critical. And the last thing is I learned that I'm in something called the marriageable age. So apparently these things matter now. Like what my body looks like is of concern to the entire society. So if I can arm myself with some cold, hard facts, that would be great, yeah.
Hi, I'm Gayatri, and I teach feminist and queer theory, so I'm compelled by this.
Hi, I'm Priya. I'm interested in all interpretations of the female body.
Priya,
Any and all.
Love that, yeah.
I forgot this word. Anyway, I'm working on something. I'm Pushpamala, I'm an artist. I actually do performance photography and work with video and live performance as well. Recently, I've been working with medical models, and since I use myself, and I thought it'd be interesting. I'll get some ideas from this.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pushpa.
Okay. So the reason I wanted to do this is because every audience is very, very different, and I think such a wealth of experience in the room, and such a wealth of different kinds of experience. So that's very exciting for me as a presenter. So we're going to keep pausing it. Just raise your hand if you want to say something, add something at absolutely any point. Yeah? Okay. So the amazing Flabby-breasted virgin and other sordid tales, that lovely title that brought so many of you here. It comes from a forensic medical textbook.
that's in use across the country. And why the title is the title, I will get to in a couple of slides. Yeah. So over the course of research for this project, I did a series of interviews with doctors across Mumbai, Bangalore, and other parts of Maharashtra and Karnataka. One of the ladies I interviewed was trained as a doctor in the 1950s in Patna. So she is 92 years old now. She's a retired gynecologist and absolutely fascinating woman, top of her field, taught all over, went and studied in the UK, came back and practiced in North India for many, many years. In the course of our interview, I asked her, I said, why medicine, why gynecology? And she said, well, medicine was a calling in many, many ways, because her father had a fall in the bathroom. He slipped into the toilet, in those old Indian-style toilets, and he cut his leg. And this is in a pre-antibiotic era. So they took him to hospital, and essentially there was a long waiting line. They didn't have antibiotics. He died from a septic cut that now, as we know, is very, very curable. So for her, she was 9 years old, and she remembers that very vividly, and she says, that's why I wanted to become a doctor. I think a lot of medical professionals, and I know so many of you here are medical professionals, there is something extraordinary about this profession, right? Something truly, truly extraordinary about it, and that was her motivation behind it. So she was talking to me about how, as a science student, they had a class on physiology. So she said, if you want to study medicine, you have to do physiology. It's a compulsory class. And they were sitting there in Patna and trying to learn about the hormones. And so the teacher said, well, there is fat, and that gets deposited in the breast area for girls because they have a particular type of hormone. So her friend was like, but boys are also fat, so why don't they have breasts? I'm deeply confused. And so the teacher was like, well, they don't have that specific hormone. They have a different hormone, so their fat gets distributed in other places. I was like, okay. So I'm making notes. And she said, then the teacher said that because of these hormones that the female body produces and the male body produces, women are able to create an ovum, and men are able to create a sperm, which when they meet together, they make a baby. So the class was quite confused. And she said, where do they meet? How exactly does this happen? And the teacher said, well, I don't know, but they meet and they make a baby. So the class was really conflicted. So they all went home and they discussed it with their parents and their mothers, and they're like, do you know where they meet? Because apparently they meet somewhere. And they're like, what happens? Is it like a teacup? Do you mix them together and then sort of pour it in or drink it? How does this work? And they came back the next day and went back to the teacher and said, and she says, the teacher was this young girl, unmarried, just finished her own degree. And she said, I really don't know, but I found someone who I thought might be able to help us. So she brings in this girl who was 12 years old and was studying at the school next door. And she was pregnant. So you have this teacher and this group of college students studying physiology who turned to this 12-year-old girl and said, can you tell us how it happens? We don't understand. And the girl was like, I don't know. I didn't know I was pregnant. I thought I was getting fat. But your teacher said because I'm growing in my tummy, I'm pregnant. But I don't know how it happened. So then I asked her, I said, did you find that changed when you finally learned about it? She says, well, I learned about it after I got married. And then I studied medicine, and I came back. And I said, then what happened? What was your experience like as a practicing gynecologist? And she said, so we were in a class, and the teacher said, girls have a particular hormone. And she started the whole story all over again. For about 30 minutes, every single question I asked her, she would loop back to the same story. I'd ask her about her career, about her life after that, about having children. Her daughter is also a doctor. And she kept looping back. And we asked the teacher, how does it happen? And the teacher said, I don't know. And then she brought in this girl. And so we asked the girl, he said, you must know, you're pregnant. And she said, I don't know either. And went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I have a 30-minute audio recording of the same story. And I found it very interesting. So my grandmother has dementia. So it was during that interview that I realized, oh, that's what's happening. So I recognized that. But I found it very interesting that that's the story that she got fixed on. That's the story she kept going back to. There is something about, and some of you mentioned this, the secrecy about the body that we all have and inhabit. And something around the stories and the myths that we tell ourselves and tell each other about this body. And that's why I'm doing this project, right? So I don't have a medical background. I'm a theater artist and an educator. I teach high school kids theater. I first got interested in gender and the body when I was 11, and I got TB because I started my period and my immunity dropped, and I was in hospital all the time because my grandfather was going through palliative care for throat cancer. So I was in hospital and I got TB and I had to skip school for 18 months. And I sat and read at home. I was like, this is amazing. I can read whatever I want. I can hang out at home. And I just have to take these meds and then I'll be fine. And I read a book called Maybe the Mother of 100 Sons by Elizabeth Bumiller, who was an American journalist who came to India and wrote about female feticide and female infanticide. And that was my first introduction to theory and feminist theory. So that is the lens from which I come. So we're going to play a really quick activity. If I could ask you to stand. Okay. So you can look at the statement on the board. Very simple. Medicine is an objective science. And we're going to say, this is Sunena. You met her earlier. Okay. So Sunena is strongly agree. Anyone who strongly agrees with that statement, you come and you stand next to her. We're going to say, anyone who strongly disagrees, you go and you stand right there near that speaker. Okay? And if, or Sarvana, could I ask you to stand there near the speaker? Is that okay? You can go, or you want to be here? Okay, that's Mohammed. Follow Mohammed and he's going to be over there. And if you're somewhere on the spectrum in between, because there's always nuance, then you stand in between, okay? So can we do that in like 10 seconds? Go. But sort of drifting towards Mohammed. We've got some very clear and confident people here. They're like, of course it's objective. What are you talking about? And then there's this gap, which is very interesting. I'm so curious about this gap. Oh, whoa, we have one person here. Okay, so just very quickly, could you tell us why you're standing where you're standing?
Because medicine does not care about your background, bias, whatever. It is very, it's the same for everybody. It's a leveler. Just like technology, medicine is a leveler.
Okay. Awesome. Anybody who disagrees with him from the other polar opposite, who would like to say something because they strongly disagree with that statement? Go.
I think personal experience of my father's cancer, as well as in the social space, I see that the pharma industry, there's just so many things that just doesn't make me feel medicine is objective at all.
Okay, someone in the middle. Why are you standing where you're standing? Can you hear me if I don't use a mic? Yeah. So it's okay if I don't? No. Please use it. Okay. Yes, using the mic. Gentleman at the back, we did get your introduction as well. But yeah, please. Why are you standing where you're standing?
Yeah, I chose in the midway because two things. One, my mom was a doctor, so I know why she used to be very objective about it. And I lost her due to cancer, and I know why it's not objective. So that's the reason I'm in the middle.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay. Anybody else who really wants to say something about why they're standing where they're standing?
Objective science,
It's a bit redundant. Yes, yes. Yes. Secondly, it doesn't depend on individuals, but why do you go to different doctors then?
In 2019, women have achieved gender equality. So,
This is strongly agreed. All alone, yes.
Mohammed. Okay, interesting. So I think that's fairly clear. If a woman is HIV positive, she should not be allowed to have a child. Strongly agree, strongly disagree. Tougher question. Much, much tougher question. If you strongly disagree with this statement, you stand next to Muhammad. If you strongly agree with the statement, you stand next to Sunana. If you're somewhere in the middle, choose where in the middle. Are you closer to her, closer to him, somewhere neutral, like right bang in the middle? Stand where you feel truly represents your belief system. We don't know. We don't know. This is all the information that you've been given based on this information. Based on just this information. If a woman is HIV positive, she should not be allowed to have a child. Do you strongly agree or disagree? Has everybody found their positions that they're kind of happy with? Okay, brilliant. Can you tell us why you're standing where you're standing? Shobha, right? Yeah, Shobha.
My assumption is that...
Everyone's okay? Yes? Okay, brilliant. Yes, Shobha.
So I realize I'm in a severe minority here. My assumption is that it is transmitted to the child. So I would fall in the realm of trying to convince, not say no, but that would be... Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, brilliant.
So from what I have understood about HIV positive is that it affects the immunity of an individual. So if the immunity of a child is already vulnerable because it's prone to more diseases and all of that, why should a child be brought into a world of trauma and disease right at birth?
Okay, great. Let's have someone from the other extreme. Yeah?
Yeah, I kind of disagree to the fact that the women, this choice should be left to the mother, whether she wants to bring a child. And as per my information, if the child is diagnosed when the child is in the womb, there are treatments with which there is no chance of this child continuing to be with this.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
There are treatments. Thank you for sharing that, Anybody else? Yeah, sure.
Similar to what she said, the term itself that she shouldn't be allowed. She should have the choice, and allowing a woman for something is nobody's business. That's all.
What if she was a drug addict? Would you change your position? Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's basically about informed choice. A woman is entitled to her choice, first of all. I mean, otherwise it's very disempowering. But she could certainly be educated about situations where there is possibility of a defective childbirth or whatever that. But then I think this requires counseling, and I would definitely not be on that side where it says no.
Okay.
So, I think it's about women's empowerment, and then being appropriately counseled and educated about it.
I think you wanted to say something?
I'm saying there's treatment for it now, so she should definitely, I agree with Shashank that she should be counseled and told that there is treatment, and now you decide.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, brilliant. So, oh, where's my laptop? Oh. Ah, yes.
Yeah?
Hi, I agree with what has been said till now. First of all, the word allowed is not really something that, it's everyone's choice. And also the fact that even if person is HIV positive, And like the doctor said, if she's on treatment, that shouldn't be a problem. In fact, going forward, I think they're even going to have them donate sperms and things like that, even if they're HIV positive. So I think we have to look forward, and it's really not for anyone to judge about it. Yeah?
Strongly agree, Sunana. Strongly disagree, Mohammed. Whatever your interpretation of that statement is, however you best understand it. Strongly agree, Sunana. Strongly disagree. Yeah. Ah, we have a familiar face on this side. Okay, great. Everyone's found their position? Still undecided? Okay. Great. Okay, let's take a couple of opinions. Brilliant. You haven't spoken before, so let's see why exactly are you standing where you're standing. Yes.
You say something natural when you're talking in terms of people or civilization per se, you seem to think it is just commonplace or accepted, but when you're talking about natural, it also means that does it exist in nature or not? I'm
Yeah,
seeing it from that
yeah.
side.
The wording is very deliberate.
And consent in a lot of situations does not exist in nature, but that does not mean you have to mimic it in human civilization.
Does consent exist in nature?
Not always.
Mm.
I mean, not generally so.
There's a really fascinating thing about ducks who can change the shape of their... so if they're being penetrated and they don't want to be, they can change the direction so they don't get pregnant. But yeah, that's
That
fun.
can happen, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Someone on that side who wants to tell us why they're standing where they're standing? Someone who hasn't spoken before, perhaps? Okay, no problem. Do you want to tell us why you're standing where you're standing?
So just the context, my interpretation is this. So if there's a big ditch there, there's no light, it's raining, you can't see it, it's natural that you're going to go and fall into it, okay? That's what I mean by that. So in a country like ours, women are objectified, women are told if men are staring at them, it's their fault. They are always blamed. Education is not there, jobs, employment, nothing is there. The only thing that men think they own is a woman, and therefore rape is the only natural thing that comes out of this feeling that I own the woman. Whether it's your wife, your girlfriend, the woman walking on the street, it's what it is going towards. So it's the most natural thing that's going to happen. It's not right, but we are naturally as a society, heading towards this being normal. And you have rapists in positions of power, rapists and roaming out in the open. So it's just natural that rape happens.
Okay, thank you. I love that you talked about ownership, because we're going to come back to that quite a lot in this conversation. Anybody? I saw a lot of people nodding while he was talking. Does anybody want to change where they're standing? Okay, very interesting. Okay, come sit back down. Thank you. Thank you so much for humoring me and doing that little exercise with me. So the reason I wanted to play with that activity was because I think they are actually really polarizing statements. The point of this talk is not to demonize anyone, anything, or any opinion. It is to have a conversation around things that we don't always have a conversation around. So let's go through this and then come back to the statements at the end and see what you feel and where your opinions are at, okay? I'm going to start a little bit with the history of the allopathic medical system as we know it today, which some of you may already be familiar with. So this is a great book. Anybody who wants it. Oh, just to say, anything that I'm quoting from, any research that I'm sharing here, I have it all saved on a Padlet. You guys, you're familiar with Padlet? It's a thing where you can crowdsource a lot of stuff. It's like Google Docs. So if you want access to any of this, you can always just come to me at the end of the conversation and I will send you all these documents.
So this is a great book. It's called Witches, Midwives, and Nurses. It was published by the Feminist Press in the US. And it talks about the history of the medical system and the church. So very briefly, I'm just going to go really briefly into what we know as allopathic medicine today came from the establishment of medical colleges, which for many years and many decades, and everybody knows this, were restricted to only men. What did people do before that? It's fairly commonplace knowledge. Everybody had midwives. In India, we say dais, like different women who helped with the birthing process, women who often had knowledge about herbs or bones or blood and things like that, and they would healers in a lot of cultures, yeah, with some associations with pagan rituals, often not. One of the institutions that came out very strongly against that system was the Christian church. If you look at any of the Semitic religions, and it's really fascinating, I was looking at, I'll pass those out later, but A.C. Mohanty's Legal Medicine, and it talks about the unnaturalness of lesbianism and homosexuality in general. And it says, homosexuality is unnatural because it used to be practiced in this town called Gomorrah. And it was very sinful, which is why it was outlawed. Has anybody heard of this town called Gomorrah before? Yeah, where is it from? Yes, yes, it's from the Bible. It's from a chapter called Sodom and Gomorrah. It's where the word sodomy comes from. It is a fictional town. And the story is, how many of you know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? Yeah. Okay? Yes. Mm. Yeah, so essentially in Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible, it says that there's this chap called Lot. He's very, very good. Everybody around him is very, very bad. God is like, I'm going to destroy your town, so you should run away with your wife and your daughters. And Lot is like, no, please give them a second chance. I will save my friends and neighbors. So he goes around trying to collect good people to prove to God that Sodom and Gomorrah is not sinful. And somehow he can't manage it. And then 2 young men come to visit him, and what he doesn't know is that they're angels sent by God to check things out on the ground. So these angels come in and they stay at his house as guests. And at night, all these terrible, bad people in Sodom and Gomorrah come and bang on the door and say, let us in, we want to have sex with the men who are in your house because they're very beautiful. They're angels, I mean, maybe. So Lot is like, no, that would be sinful. I'm a good man. I know the difference between these things. You can have my daughters instead. So God is so impressed by Lot's dedication and goodness and how he saved the angels that God says, okay, you have 30 minutes. I'm going to put fire down and burn down the town. So you and your wife and your daughters, you have to run away. Run to the hills, run into the mountains, and don't look back. Because if you look back, then you will regret it. So Lot is like, okay, fine. We're out of chances, out of choices. So he takes his daughters, he takes his wife, and they start running towards the hills. And fire starts falling from the sky. And as fire is falling, his wife remembers growing up in that town and living her entire life, and she turns around and she looks back. And she turns into a pillar of salt. Because, you have to be obedient. So Lot and his 2 daughters are the only ones who make it up into the mountains. The entire town is destroyed. And they're like, oh no, what are we going to do about population? It is our responsibility to populate the world. So the daughters are like, well, there's only one guy. So they get their father really drunk and then take turns having sex with him so that they can continue the human race. Great story, right? This is where Gomorrah is from. And that's what's still in our textbook, right? That's where the unnaturalness of sodomy and lesbianism comes from, which is why 377 being struck down was so historic. Okay, so medicine and the church has a very, very old relationship. They've been buddies for a long time. The first doctors were all priests. It was compulsory to study theology if you wanted to practice medicine. You needed to have a knowledge of astronomy, that's the stars, and you needed to have knowledge of God's holy word, which included such words of wisdom as the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. So only then were you allowed to be a doctor. So if you look at the history of the Salem witch trials, which I'm sure all of you have some awareness of and have heard of, doctors testified at the trials against the witches, right? So what was the biggest threat to this burgeoning, growing medical industry? It was the women healers who were already owning that space of healing and working with reproduction and birthing babies, and who people trusted and said, well, that's a threat because that's not from the church. That's not from the Bible. So, which is where you have your witch trials and your very systematic destruction. There's lots of brilliant, brilliant research on this. A lot of them were compared to Lilith. How many of you have heard of the myth of Lilith? Okay. Christian? No. I was like, okay, check. Okay, great. The myth of Lilith, she's this, so she was supposed to have been created around the time that Adam and Eve were created as this counterpart to Eve, but deeply evil. And she was always naked, that's why she was evil. And, I mean, she would fly around at night in her wanton nakedness and have sex with sleeping men. Okay, so it was like she was this awful creature, and her breasts were supposed to be filled with poison. So if she came near pregnant women, their milk would turn into poison, and their babies would die. Okay, so she was the epitome of everything. So we first hear of Lilith in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is where a lot of the Bible comes from as well. And she's also called the patron of abortions in James Joyce's Ulysses because she's so incredibly bad, right? So from the biblical idea of Lilith, the awful female, comes, you've got the witches and the way the witches were characterized, and the okay? Sorry. Okay. The way the witches were characterized, and the way the medical industry in the West first started out. So then I'm going to jump like many centuries later, like just compressing a lot of stuff, many years, towards Florence Nightingale and the feminization of nursing. How many of you are familiar with that beautiful image of the woman with the lamp, Florence Nightingale? Yeah, that's a familiar image. Everybody's seen it. She was held up as this patron, this amazing woman who was incredibly kind and such a wonderful nurse. So what Florence Nightingale did, and if you read her writing, and she's written quite extensively on the subject, if you read her writing about why women should be nurses, and she said it is an appropriate role for women because only men can be doctors, and only men should be doctors. And caring is natural to women because women are mothers. Okay, so that's for all the women who are here on behalf of your daughters, So she was like, this is exactly what our role should be. This is natural for us. This is our place within the medical establishment. So it's really fascinating to sort of pick apart icons that we're familiar with and what they actually said about their own role in society. Yeah. And finally, again, where this brings me to is, how many of you know what misoprostol is? What is misoprostol? Sorry? Yep, that's right. It's the medical abortion pill. It induces abortions. How was it? Was it created to induce abortions? No. It was created to treat gastric ulcers. Okay, it was created to treat gastric ulcers, and there were a group of women in Brazil who realized that on the packet it said, "Do not take if you are pregnant." And they said, "Oh, wait a minute, this could work if I don't actually want to have this kid. Okay? So what I'm coming to is, yes, of course, there have been oppressive systems. There was the church, and they sort of took over the whole medical establishment. But women have always done what they've wanted to do at the end of the day. I mean, even if it's reading the back of a gastric ulcer tablet, blister pack, okay, to figure out what they can possibly do. So within all of these larger systems, there's always has been, and there continues to be, a lot of brilliant, brilliant work that is being done. I mean, the very proof of all of you sitting here in this room today is proof that feminism is alive and well. And, that so many of you are working within the feminist movement in your own ways. And yet you all went and stood at that side and I said, have we achieved it? Is it done? Is the revolution over? Yeah? Everyone's like, no. Work needs to be done. But that's been happening for centuries. So I think what's exciting about this subject is that there are people doing amazing work. There have bbeen people doing work for centuries. But what we're dealing with is not a small thing. Yeah? So I'm going to jump ahead to the 19th century, where you've got Marx and Engels, who are more well known for their writing on the Communist Manifesto. Yes, Engels also wrote another book. By profession, he was an anthropologist, and he wrote this book called The Origin of the Family. People familiar with that book? I have a copy. It's also available for free online, so feel free to just Google it. You'll find it. It's a great book. So based on his anthropological research and conversation with people who worked with tribes across Asia and Africa and Native America, he was curious about where does the biological family unit come from. He says, if we're going to have any sort of conversation about class oppression, you have to start with gender oppression, because that's the original difference. That's the original oppressive state. Before you get into macro, within the family unit, you have that, which is also why Marx would, years later, call marriage upper-class prostitution, right? So Engels went back looking for where does the family come from? The idea of the mother, the father, the 3 little children, the dog and the fence, like where does that come from? And he found that we have, for years, nomadic hunter-gatherer communities. And when you're a nomadic hunter-gatherer community, you don't own things because you're moving all the time, right? And when the economic model shifted to agriculture, that's the first time that you own something. Is this the only place that we see a sudden link between owning things and women's oppression? So suddenly, when you own stuff, you own land. You own the fruit of that land. Suddenly, you've got a division in labor because women are out of that workforce and they're not able to work for X amount of time when they're carrying children, right? At that point, you haven't got the paired marriage bonding that we're used to. You've got, it's sort of a much more sexually freer society. Children were born and the whole community sort of took care of them, right? And then suddenly, because you have men doing more of the work outside, just because women were out of the workforce every now and then when they were carrying. And they wanted to pass, according to Engels, they wanted to pass what they owned onto their own biological offspring. So it's because of inheritance and the idea of inheritance along the male line that the family is first created. So it's like, how do I make sure that this child is my blood? I make sure she doesn't have sex with anyone else, right? So you've got the very first conception of female virginity, super important, female non-virginity, terribly important, and the first time that people are like, okay, I own this woman the way I own this land. I own this woman the way I own that fruit. And that's where it started. That's where it began, right? And then, of course, it's refined and perfected as a model of economic exploitation
as well as sociological exploitation for years and years and years. I'm going to come back to that because the word virgin, and this is a painting, it's a Dutch painting, Gottfried Schleichen, called The Medical Examination, where he's looking at her urine to determine if she's a virgin. Do you think he's going to be successful? Okay, so so suddenly virginity is this national, international obsession, right? The whole idea is that I want to make sure that this child belongs to me, therefore if I know exactly who she's fucked and how many times, I will know. Okay? That was the problem. So we move from I'm going to jump ahead another 100 years. We're looking at Shulamit Firestone, this one of my favorite radical feminists. A lot of you probably know of her as well. She wrote a super fun book called The Dialectic of Sex. Copyrights expired, also available for free online. And she says, the end goal of revolution must be not just the elimination of male privilege, but of the sex distinction itself. Genital differences would no longer matter. The reproduction of the species by one sex for the benefit of both would be replaced by artificial reproduction. So how many of you have seen The Matrix? Baby farms? That's what she's talking about. Okay, so her theory, she said, we will never ever achieve freedom from this, and this is 1970s, so it's like a little bit before DNA testing was as perfected and as reliable as it is today. And so she's like, the only way we will ever achieve genuine equality is if you outsource baby making. Okay, give it to machines, we have the technology, let's get on with it, let's do that, and make everybody else androgynous. That's the only way this works. That was her theory, and she died a very disappointed feminist because none of that happened. Okay, so, yes? Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Now there's the pregnancy test.
Yes.
So what is the origin of that?
He's looking for her virginity.
So the urine was about virginity test.
Yes.
But it later became
about
science.
yes. So the idea is that over the course of so it's a great question actually. There's always been, everything is trial and error, right? In every industry, everything. You try something, you figure it out. It was supposed to be a gastric ulcer pill. Turns out it's a great abortifacient, right? So everything, the studying of the body, and I'm going to show you some extracts later from the Charaka Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita, which are ancient Indian Ayurvedic texts. And they're seen as the backbone of Ayurveda, so you see where medicine comes from on the Indian context. And again, there's so much, what was surprising, okay, and this speaks to my own biases, but what was surprising for me when I was reading those texts was how much they got right. And these are ancient texts, and it's fascinating how accurate they are in their knowledge and understanding of the body. So we've had these amazing, brilliant minds in medicine, just like in every other industry, but along the line of Western allopathic medicine, along with Ayurvedic medicine, and how when it then blended into what the current medicine that we have today in India. And we've had phenomenal research, phenomenal experimentation, and through that, trial and error, people have found things that actually worked. My curiosity throughout was, what is the way that you have looked at the female body? And how does that link up with what we know from a sociological perspective, what we know from a historical perspective, from an anthropological perspective about the way the female body exists, right? So that's where I'm reading it from a feminist lens of what is the body looking like. And that was really interesting to see. So with the history of allopathic medicine, you see a lot of their original idea of the female body was that it's an inverse of the male. It's everything the male is, but ulta. So for example, you have the penis for the man, the vagina is an inverse penis. And we have some really cool diagrams that I unfortunately don't have. It was on my other laptop and whatever, I had a tech glitch. But I can send them to you. And really beautiful diagrams about how the vagina is the penis inverse. And you can tell, and this is still in our textbooks, this is not only from the past, where you can tell that a woman is a homosexual because she has a much larger clitoris, which is like a baby penis. Did you know this? I was so fascinated. I was like, oh my God, I want to go check now. This is so cool. And I'm really curious, what were the studies? Like, how many women did you check? Is there like a measurement index? Like this one, between 5 and 30 centimeters is considered large. Like, what's your definition of enlarged clitoris? Does it have to have foreskin? I'm so confused. But, so that, and this is still in our textbooks, you know, that a woman who is a homosexual woman, you can tell by looking at her vagina and her clitoris in particular. Okay, so yeah, does that answer your question? Sorry. I got off on a tangent, vaguely. Yeah, this looks at, he was looking at her thing to determine virginity. Of course, he was not successful. But it also brings me to another question. Like, how many of you have ever heard of a male virgin? What is a male virgin? How do you tell if a man is a virgin? Real question. How do you tell if a woman is a virgin? How do you know if a woman is a virgin? Obviously not by looking at her urine, turns out, but no, we have other methods now. How do we know if a woman is a virgin? I think, here, this is from Rao's Legal Medicine. I don't have many, no, just that one. I don't have many copies. I was expecting a smaller turnout, but you can share. But that's got a really cool, handy little table. Since we're on the topic of virginity, I figure we'll stop here and look at that. The differences between a floret and a defloret woman. A virgin is a floret woman. Where does that word come from? Any linguists among us? I think there was at least one who works with language. What is the word floret? It's very obvious. It's exactly what it sounds like. It comes from flowers. Because we all know women are flowers. Easily crushed. Nice smelling. Transient. So, totally accurate comparison. And we all know that when a woman has sex, she suddenly stops being a flower. So she becomes defloret and is somehow spoiled forever. So what is the differences? People who have had a chance to look at the document that I passed around. That's verbatim. It's a photocopy from the textbooks. Textbooks here if anybody wants to look at it. I have soft copies of that as well. Yeah, sure. Do you want another minute to look at it? And then let's crowdsource some answers. How do we know? Because is there anything about urine on there? No. How do we know if a woman is a virgin? They examine the hymen. What is the hymen? Yeah, wait, I think there's another mic as well, right, Mohammed? Yeah. And someone else. What is the hymen? What is the hymen? Yes, no problem. No, thank you. That's very sweet of you, Shobha. Okay. The hymen is a piece of... What's your pop culture knowledge of the hymen? Just doesn't have to be accurate. It's not a test. Tissue. Some kind of tissue, okay? Some kind of tissue? Great. What's the shape of the hymen? What does it look like?
Isn't it different for everything? I mean, every woman?
Yes. Is it sort of, yeah?
It's a sheet. Take the mic, yeah. Like you said, like it does not take a particular shape because it's a sheet.
A sheet, okay. Anybody else?
Sheet.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, a sheet. Is it a sheet? Anybody else?
It's super elastic.
Scrunchy, elastic, okay. So you're like, it's more shaped like a scrunchie, you're like, it's more shaped like a sheet, okay. No. Anybody else on what it probably looks like?
Like, how do you know that you're looking at a hymen? Have you checked? Okay, brilliant. So, yes, the hymen is not a sheath. It's like a scrunchie, sort of, but it often just doesn't exist. A lot of women don't have one. Some have them, some don't. Sometimes it tears when you have sex, sometimes it tears when you ride a bike, which our textbooks do qualify. This is not reliable, but it is a very important text for virginity. And if it is torn, and then there's a nice table with like 7 different ways it can tear. Diagonal, straight, horizontal tears. Just like, wow, like someone spent a lot of time on this. Like a long time figuring out the many ways that a piece of tissue can tear. I'm so curious, does foreskin tear when a man has sex for the first time? Like, did anyone study that? I really don't know. Like, maybe then we'd know if men were virgins or not. Maybe then we could check. The thing is, it's not relevant, right? Nobody cares if a man is a virgin or not because nobody owns a man. The idea is that you know if a woman is a virgin or not because a woman is a piece of property. This is not a new thought, it's not a new concept, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But the idea is that just like you, when you buy a car, you want to know that there's got fresh leather seats. You buy a laptop, you'd like it to not be refurbished if you have the budget. You buy a woman, you'd like her to be, all intact. Never opened her legs, doesn't know what she looks like down there. Never looked at anyone else. So the only reason that we have virginity, and if you look at the textbook again, it's like 5 glorious pages describing virginity, is because a woman is not a person. A woman is a object, right? And when you own something, you have to be able to tell whether it's new or not. So if you look at the sheet that I've passed around, it describes some other really fun differences. Apparently, this is where the title comes from, apparently when women have sex, their breasts become flabby. I didn't know this. I developed breasts when I was 12 years old, and they've always sagged. I'm so shocked. I feel like I was cheated somehow. Like I was supposed to have some sort of super perky boobs, and they just dropped on me at the time. This is not fair. What the hell? It also says, really fun part, I think it's like the second or third line, says, your nipples are supposed to turn darker when you have sex for the first time. I was like, oh, really? I didn't know that. And then it says, apparently they go from pink to brown. I was like, has he met Indian women? Does he know sometimes they come out brown just from the beginning? Like, that's a possibility. And then I was really curious, I was like, men have nipples? Do they change color? I'm suddenly watching everybody's, like, everyone has sex, like, what color were your nipples before? Like, do you feel they've morphed, texture, color, droopiness? So in one of my interviews with a medical student, she studies at Medical College in Dhulya in Maharashtra, and I said, when you're being taught this stuff at college, like how does that go? Does everybody treat it like it's funny, or do people ask questions about it? I don't know. So she said, when they were at this particular section, someone asked the teacher, and he was like, why do the breasts become flabby if you've had sex? And apparently the teacher said, well, when a woman has sex, the breasts are massaged. So they become flabby. And virgins, as we all know, never touch their breasts. So I was like, oh, that's great. That's a good explanation. Now I understand everything. I feel enlightened now. Okay. So, yeah. So there's a lot of And it brings me back to our first statement, is medicine an objective science? And the gentleman at the back very astutely said, is that an oxymoron? Because science is supposed to be objective, but nothing is objective, I would argue. Nothing is objective. Everything has its history, everything is colored by the society and the culture and the lens from which it is seen. Medicine is a product of human beings. It has done amazing things, it continues to do amazing things. And yet, it is very much a product of the society to which we belong. So a lot of this, I don't know if it reminds you of Lilith, and her awful, dark, drooping, flabby breasts filled with poison that could kill little children in their sleep. Right? So much of what we're seeing in our textbooks even today. As of March 2019, Maharashtra, and this is after 20 years of lobbying by the Indian Medical Ethics Institute, Maharashtra removed that section from the textbook. Nowhere else in India has it been removed. Still very much there. And people from within the industry have been lobbying for years. I don't know anything. I'm so new. I've been looking at this for what? 10 months. People who have grown, who are doctors, have been talking about this. My whole introduction to the subject was because I read an article on this great platform called Agents of Ishq, and Agents of Ishq published an anonymous article by a gynecologist, a leading gynecologist in Mumbai, and she wrote about the textbooks. And she said, this is what we're taught. I was a student, I was really confused, I didn't understand, I didn't agree with it, I didn't know what to do. And it was years later when I was practicing that I was like, wait a minute, stuff doesn't add up. Like, this is not what I thought I was going to see. And there's not enough conversation about it. And she wrote the article anonymously because she said, I don't want people to know it's me, because otherwise they'll just dismiss me. Like, oh, she's that feminist gynecologist, so like, whatever, right? So all of the brilliant work is actually happening from within the community. We're just spectators in the arts community. We're looking at this and saying, oh, this is really cool. So she founded and she runs a brilliant organization called the Asia Safe Abortion Partnership. And they're a consortium of organizations, family planning organizations, Planned Parenthood branches, etc., across Asia, who do gender sensitization trainings with medical students. And they talk about the patriarchy, they talk about the history of medicine, they talk about witches, and they talk about what it's like to reclaim medicine as a woman, right? So that was my introduction. Anything that I know is because of Dr. Suchitra Dalvi and ASAP. You had a question? Okay. Firestone, where does that leave us? Yeah. What is the future of the female body? So we know what the past is, which I sort of like really jumped through many centuries, but we know what the past is vaguely. Like, okay, that's where we're coming from. We know what the present is, Gomorrah, and changing nipple colors. You know, it's like, why are there other colors? Why just pink and brown? If there was an option, like maybe purple would have been fun. But, you know, so we know what the present is. What is the future of the female body? If the body comes from, and this is a question that when I was discussing what to talk about today with Sunena, so she came up with this and she's like, that's what we keep coming back to, and I was like, you're right. Because if you're looking at the female body as something that is owned as an object to be owned the way we have land, kitchen supplies, that's what you qualify with virgin. Virgin land, virgin olive oil, virgin hair that has not been treated or colored, and all of the connotations of purity that one ascribes to that state of childness, like childlikeness. When do boobs really sag? When a girl gets older. When does stuff change for her? When she gets older. So what is this really fascinating fetishization of a young girl? So your property must not just be new, she must be suitably young. Then we say, oh, why do we have child sexual abuse? Well, maybe this is why. Right? The idea is not that she's just new, but she's also young enough to never have droopy breasts. Young enough for her boobs to not have dropped. That's the standard for mint condition female property, right? So again, from a linguist perspective, and I'm an English teacher, so I'm again biased, but if you look at that document that is circulated, you've got lots of lovely, very choice language choices on both sides. If you see, we have shout out. What is a florid woman? She is perky. She is, what are the other words on the, what are the other words? Perky, thin, pink,
intact.
Intact. What else? Firm, yes. So lots of lovely connotations. And what are the words that are associated with a defloret woman? You know, the one who's not a flower anymore. Flabby and
Enlarged.
Enlarged. God forbid. Got fat. Okay. What else? Those of you who have the very limited pieces of food. Absent! Yes, I love that. Yeah, the hymen is absent. So a deflored woman, things are missing. It's like you have a speaker system and one really essential cable is gone. Absence. What are the other words associated with being deflored?
Lack of innocence.
Lack of innocence, yeah. Absolutely. So essentially when she's an adult. Yeah, horrible state. Okay, we don't want adult women, they're too angry. Children are much easier. They don't shout that much. They're not sarcastic about it. Just shut up. Okay. So this is some extracts from the, which I have paraphrased, it's not verbatim, from the Sociological Samhita. Like I said, we're looking at ancient Indian medical practices. Where does that come from? So I was really curious. I was like, is this virginity myth there in the Ayurvedic texts? Right? So that's what I was specifically looking for. But I found this instead. Menstruating women are unclean, la la la, this is not new. We still have places in India where this happens. Should not sleep during the day or your children will be lazy. That was fun. If you wear eye makeup, the child will be blind. So since you're in marriage prep, I mean, I think this is like super useful. Like, just so you know, like don't throw out your eyeliner. And if you cry, the child will have defective eyesight. So you really want to like never ever, cut onions. If you comb your hair, the child will be bald. If you laugh very loudly, your child will be deaf. Really important, because you know that's the end of the world, right? If you have a deaf child, and it's totally your fault. And if you do anything fatiguing, the child will be mad. I actually like that part, because it means you can like rest all day. But yeah, don't do anything fatiguing, your child will be mad. I don't know what that means, but that's the word that was used. Also 2 pages on how to beget a male child. This was really fun. There was a lot of content on this. Like specific times of the day, specific sexual positions that create male children. I was like, this is amazing. And if this worked, we would be a country of only men. Why do we exist? I'm so confused. People are not obeying the instructions. Damn it. Conception is described, I really love this description, it's described as, you know, someone was very poetic when they were writing this text, as all of them are. Like, oh, when, you know, conception is when you put a lump of clarified butter, ghee, okay, next to the fire and it just melts. And it's like amazing. The teacher who taught that nice old lady I interviewed should have really read this book. Would have explained everything. You know, that's how they meet, next to the fireplace. And they're melting, apparently. And if a woman is on top when conceiving a daughter, the daughter will have masculine traits, because obviously. No words. But this was my favorite. When 2 women have sex and one gets pregnant somehow, it's like, okay. A boneless monstrosity is born and should be ascribed as a part of a deadly sin. So I was like, that's great. At least, we're not far behind. We may not have Sodom and Gomorrah, but we have bogus monstrosities. That's our version. Because obviously women with women creates no bones. Flesh lumps. That's the masculine element, the bones. It didn't seem to have anything about what if two men sleep with each other, like do they have like a bony skeleton? I don't know. Like that was not included. I felt these were really important bits that were absent for some reason. It's like, why is this not there? But okay. The only mention that I could find of the hymen, that I was so captivated by in modern medical textbooks, it was mentioned just once in the entire text. And I really looked hard. I have no life. And it said, you have to be careful of the hymen. If it's very tight or if it's, it's not perforated, then it could cause phimosis. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. In men, phimosis is when the foreskin encapsulates the whole penis. And because a stubborn hymen could hurt the penis. That was it. There was no mention of virginity or how to determine if a woman is a virgin, which I thought was interesting. There was lots of this other stuff. So then we said, okay, let's look at the Charaka Samhita. So Sociological Samhita had more stuff about, from a surgical perspective. Yes, of course.
The second point has a little bit of truth in it. Because the pH of the vagina matters whether it's the X sperm or the Y sperm that goes up faster.
I did not know that. That's really cool. So is it like a higher pH? And
I don't remember. Higher pH and lower pH facilitates faster transport of which. Right. But there is a pH and the speed at which the X or the Y sperm moves.
That's really cool. And I'm curious about why there is more writing about it, because I would love to read, and I think people would be interested.
I learned about this from a teacher of mine, and she said, let's not publicize it.
Okay.
She was a cytogeneticist in St. John's, and she said, let's not publicize it, and these are her words.
Secret in the medical community that we are not privy to, but thank you for sharing it with us and stay within these walls. Okay. So then we look at the Charaka Samhita. So Sociological Samhita is mostly a surgical text. Charaka is more about drugs and herbs and what combination to take for what various illnesses. Again, really fun text. This is verbatim from the Charaka Samhita. Again, this is just 3 things that would fit on the slide. But after the onset of menstruation, for 3 days and nights, the woman should observe celibacy, should sleep on the ground, take food with hands from an unbroken utensil, virginity, and should not cleanse her body in any way. On the 4th day, she should be anointed, I like that part, and bathed from head and provided with white apparel along with the man, because white is pure. So, while it didn't mention virginity in an explicit sense, there was a lot of conversation about what is and is not pure. Right? And I think, again, in Hinduism, of course, there's larger conversations that we still have about what is and is not pure. And lovely links with the caste system, which we discussed at last month's EET on annihilation of caste. Both the partners wearing white apparel and garland with pleasant disposition. Don't have sex in a bad mood, guys. Okay? And loving each other. But I like that it included that. You have to love each other. And should enter into sexual intercourse on even day, not odd days, even days after bath. That's also nice. Hygiene is good. If they desire a male child, or odd days if they desire a female. Again, now this should have been publicized. Here are people going crazy trying to have boys, doing all kinds of crazy shit, ultrasound and peda bato, barfi bato, peda bato, barfi bato. Just do this. I mean, why are you having a laugh trying to get any other thing? I mean, this is perfect. It's like a map. Also, this echoes what's in the Sociological Samhita, that says the woman subjected to overeating, hunger, thirst, fear, detraction, grief, anger, or having desire for other man, excessive coitus, nymphomania, side reference, does not conceive or gives birth to an abnormal child. It does not define what an abnormal child is, but maybe it was a boneless monstrosity. Too much sex with women or desire for other men while having sex with women, all these terrible perversions When they are stimulated well and favorably disposed for coitus, they should go to the bed well perfumed, well covered. I did not understand that part. I was like, how are you well covered? Okay. And comfortable after taking favorite food, la la la. The man should stand with his right leg and the woman with her left one, and they should recite the mantras, Ahirasi and Brahma, and start the sexual act. Guys, the original aphrodisiac. Ta-da! Brahmanism. Okay, so fun stuff. But yeah, no overt references to virginity, but still very, very interesting. And of course, we can see the inheritance of some of this in terms of nowadays we've got corporate feminism is very excited about let's make an ad about touching the pickle, and like all of that fun stuff. But so we do, but there are absolutely still places. One of the women I interviewed a couple of weeks ago talked about growing up in the mountains in India. She must be, this would have been the 70s, so not that long ago, and about a friend of hers in school who wouldn't come to school for 7 days every month, and when they went to visit her once because the exams were on, they were worried about whether or not she had the notes to study, and they found that she was living in a hut behind the house. And I mean, these are not all stories that you already know. You're already incredibly familiar with them. It still happens all over India and also parts of Nepal and other places. So that's where it comes from, right? So the texts hold our history. So they're very fascinating. There's a lot of other stuff that everybody's like, oh, this is hilarious, but I don't know if they still do the left leg, right leg thing anymore, but that surprisingly stayed. I'm curious, like, who decides which part we continue to follow and which part we reject? Where does that decision come in? And I found like a sort of answer in Galen's writing, Galen, again, I'm not sure the pronunciation, really ancient Greek writer about the, again, Western allopathic medicine. He said the most curious thing about the female body is that it bleeds, but it does not die. I was like, well, that's quite fascinating. And I can understand that. It must have been really confusing. You've got this creature that kind of looks somewhat like you, but bleeds every month and doesn't die. Anyone else, you cut and you bleed out, and you will die. So that must have been, if you lived at a point where you didn't have an explanation for what menstruation was or what the link between menstruation and reproduction and babies and all that jazz, then I suppose that might have been quite a spooky, scary thing, which perhaps, maybe it's just me postulating, is why there's quite a lot of writing about it and how to do it and how it's maybe impure and not to be trusted because we don't know why it happens, right? So it makes sense. It makes absolute sense. What doesn't make sense is that it's still followed, but it makes sense why it started, yeah? Yeah, so I think we already talked about this in the previous slide, in the modern medical textbooks, which I've shared some of those with you. The body as site of performance and the virginity myth. We've discussed that quite detail. Another aspect that's in today's textbooks that I found very interesting was this table. Sexual offenses encountered routinely, natural, unnatural, and sexual perversions. What's natural? At one point I thought, maybe we could play a game, and I was going to give you like these printed out and laminated, and I said match them to the correct column. And then I was like, maybe it'll take too much time. I was like, let's just use the picture. But yeah, natural is rape and incest. That's also where the original statement comes from, is rape a natural thing? According to our medical education system, it is. So I suppose it's not surprising if rape survivors and child sexual abuse survivors are not taken very seriously because, well, it's perfectly natural what happened to you, and in the animal kingdom they don't make such a big fuss, so why are you complaining? Very natural. What is not natural is lesbianism, as we all know, because boneless monstrosities are born. So we know that's bad. Buccal coitus from Gomorrah. Yeah. Bestiality, which we know is the same as lesbianism, of course, and sodomy, old favorite, from Sodom and Gomorrah. Sexual perversions. That's really interesting that there's a third column. So is something perverse natural or unnatural, or somehow somewhere in that gray area in between? And this incredibly perverse thing, masturbation, same category as nymphomania and necrophilia, which is having sex with dead bodies. Necrophagia, which I had to look up, is eating dead bodies for sexual pleasure. And we all know that's the same as masturbation. Equally bad, really horrible. This has got some explanations. Again, I don't have many copies, I'm sorry, but the textbook has, circulating. But yeah, it's got explanations of some of the other fun words. It's essentially oral sex and versions of oral sex. Troilism and ongenism and voyeurism and all of that. Exhibitionism, fetishism, all these awful perverse things that we do with each other. None of them as natural as rape. Yay. But again, if we go back to the idea of the female body as property, it makes sense. Of course it makes sense. If you bought a brand new speaker system and it didn't have absent cables, and if your friend saw it and really liked it and nicked it, that's natural. It's a natural impulse to want something and to take it. Cool. Nobody asked the speaker system what it felt like. I don't know why everybody else makes such a big deal. So from that perspective, yeah, rape is natural. Men are born to rape. Women are born to be raped. I just think that's not very nice for men. He's saying it's natural for you to, because again, according to both our legal system and our medical system, only men can rape women. The opposite or anything in between is completely unknown. Yes?
How old are these textbooks and do they have...
Modern day.
No, as in the origins and how far back was this content established? Does it have any origins to, say, colonial era?
No. I think this one is like a 1970s textbook.
Is this in India or?
India.
Why is incest?
Yeah, I know. Fun, right? Fun fact, incest is on Pornhub's most searched terms. India always searches for incest. I don't know why it's relevant, but just, yeah. Maybe because it's natural. So, yeah, that might be the reason.
But the Indian medical system is modeled after the British, right?
Yes, which is where you've got your Sodom and your Gomorrah and all your evangelical Semitic influences. 100%, yes. If you look at the history of colonialism, you've got interesting fact. I was going to talk about this later, but since you brought it up, with colonial, there's a great paper by Manisha Lal, researcher called Manisha Lal, and she writes about Lady Dufferin's Fund, which was the very first time in colonial India that they tried to make some sort of way for Indian women to access Western medicine. So they said, we've got all these doctors who are coming here and treating British soldiers, right? But Indian women are very oppressed. Their husbands are horrible, and Indian men are just animals. So we feel really bad for all these poor women. And so we need to bring in female doctors from the UK to treat them. And it's really fascinating to read the original papers of the Lady Dufferin Fund, because in a way it was a deeply feminist idea. Train women so they can be gynecologists. But founded on a deeply problematic idea. They need to be gynecologists because they need to save the women of India. And the women of India will not see men. This was the claim. And that's why you need female. Yes? Of course, let me get you a mic.
I think when we just look at this, it seems a little ridiculous because of the use of the words natural, unnatural, sexual perversions. But here, I think it may not have been put really very properly, but see, rape is a so-called natural phenomenon when it takes place between a man and a woman, a man raping a woman. Incest, again, within the family, if a brother and a sister sleep together, that would be considered as a so-called natural offense. Because here we are talking about offenses as well. So the unnatural would be like sodomy, lesbianism, etc., which was considered unnatural because of the fact that it happened between two people of the same gender. So I think that is the interpretation, rather than it is natural, so it's all right to rape. I think the interpretation is a thing. And of course you have the sexual perversions, because that is totally different from just an unnatural, consensual relationship, and what seems fairly acceptable, really speaking, rather than, of course, I wouldn't agree with masturbation and being in the same thing as nymphomania and even nymphomania for that matter. Necrophilia, etc., those would be considered as perversions. So I think that is the interpretation, rather than it's natural for everyone to rape, it's natural for everyone to get into incest relationships. It's more about the offense itself and the gender that takes part in that offense. That I think, I don't know, I may be wrong, but that is my interpretation of this table.
Okay,
and that is why it continues to be there. Right. Because you need to classify it. You need to classify the offense. Okay. So maybe when they put it as natural, it's of the opposite genders, otherwise it's of the same gender.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Do you mean that it's from, because where does that understanding come from? That's where I'm curious, right? Like, where does the idea of the natural and the unnatural come from? And of course, biblically, that's very clear in the Bible. What is natural is heterosexual sex, and what's unnatural is homosexual sex. And if you look at our ancient texts, of course, bonus monstrosity. So, what is and is not considered natural, and yet homosexuality has existed forever, right? So I'm curious from a research perspective, not from a where does the idea of the classification come from?
From a research perspective, also, it comes from the colonial age, because many
from the Bible,
it's from the colonial age and from the allopathic way of looking at things. We have dismissed the Indian medicine, etc. Once allopathy came into play. And many of our laws, unfortunately, are still based on the colonial age.
They are.
So because of that, this has come down. So while we claim to be 80% Hindus, we seem to be leaning, neither here nor there, basically.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's important to remember that this is also Indian. This is pre-colonial. So yes, a lot of it is colonial, Sodom, Gomorrah, all that lovely stuff. But yes, also we were not that different in terms of our demonization. Yeah. So I think a couple of people raised their hands who wanted to respond to and just sort of take that conversation forward. So
yeah,
please.
I think if I can just supplement what Ma'am was saying, that this is probably a very literal reading of that particular.
Yes.
So maybe in the text, what needs to happen is a more nuanced approach.
What would that be? What would an example of that be?
Yeah, I mean, we need to explain why this is clubbed under the category of natural. It's not natural. I mean, it's not something desirable or unseen, but since we are describing offenses, sexual offenses, why this thing is called natural is that traditionally or culturally we have generally assigned sex between, even if it's non-consenting sex, as physically.
between the two things.
Yes. So I think some nuance is required there. The textbooks are really crippled. They're not explaining properly.
Okay. Some other responses. I saw some other hands being raised. Can you sort of
yeah. Is it universal definition of all cultures or only in the Indian textbooks?
I have not looked at current medical textbooks abroad. I've looked only at what is taught in our colleges today. Yes, this is Indian context. I don't know what they're teaching in other countries at present. Anisha, then the lady at the back. Yeah, Shravan as well. Yeah, Anisha?
So, I think we automatically assume that rape and incest mean between two people of opposite genders and that the person raping someone is male. I think a lot of young boys especially are victims of rape and can be victims of incest. I think the definition may not be so, but whatever we know rape and incest as today is... And I think this idea of natural can be sort of thought about also in a way as in, what if the instigator was a woman? Like how that impact the way
female teachers?
Yeah, because I feel like it's natural because men need to have sex. It's a very patriarchal way of looking at rape and the idea of rape. So, yeah.
Lady in the back, and then I'll share a story sort of responding to that. Yeah.
I just had a couple of things to share. One is, of course, the idea of gift economy from Margaret Mead and how women, a lot of anthropology, and Mead was one of the first European anthropologists to go into tribes and talk about kinship relationships and how women being passed around as property, or rather a gift, is also interesting because she's useful there.
Of course.
And then connecting it back to what you had shared about fetishization of perversion. Sorry, I didn't mean that way. But of a female body, right?
The young female.
Young female body is vis-a-vis and directly connected to the usefulness of saggy breasts and, of course, the womb, the golden womb that can give birth.
Yes.
So that's an interesting conversation to have. Also, again connecting to the family as a unit, because what I see, of course, this reeks of homophobia and patriarchy and all those things we don't just see here, but any textbook.
Yes.
But of course, I know this conversation is about this one. But what is interesting to me is also that rape and incest might be natural, and you could use some other word for that. Accepted, colonial, more acknowledged, more... it's wrong, but within the framework of what is right. And it's not because
I
it's...
like how you put that. That's really nice. Wrong, but within the framework of what is right.
What is largely right in our society. But unnatural is unnatural because is it not just wrong, but it is outside the framework of what is acknowledged as the useful. You know? Because as much as we're talking about patriarchy, we're not talking about capitalism, and we're not talking about the productivity of, and like Engels says, most of the idea of cohabitation and small nuclear family, and more so now, is in the productivity narrative, usefulness, functionality, what makes money, profitability, marriage as an institution for all of these. Then sexual perversions are sort of like glimpses of like, ho sakta hai, nahi ho sakta, I mean, it's not a big threat to the institution of marriage, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Unless of course, we talk about the agency, which to me is the big revolution that needs to happen. To talk about, we can talk about natural and frameworks, such and such. But till we talk about agentiality of female body and male body and all other bodies, all within the gender spectrum, we might get stuck in cyclic natures of the conversations we have been having, according to me. So yeah, those were a couple of things.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think you articulated so many things so beautifully, like really, really beautifully. Thank you so much. I agree with everything you said.
I have a slightly divergent view in the sense that when we've reached a point where every other field is impacted by the legality of what happens in the country. So the fact that today you can go and file an FIR and say that rape is an offense, right? And it is society-wise, legally, everything we agree as per the laws of the land. So it really, is very, very surprising that nobody's filed a public interest litigation in the sense that how can we still classify it as? Because we classify it as per law of the land.
There's a lot of petitions from within the medical community. Lots, but not so much outside because nobody outside usually reads the textbooks. There is a lot of conversation with them. Was there anybody else who wanted to? Yeah?
I just wanted to compliment both the persons who kind of spoke their mind because the way they put the connotations they put really made at least all of us thinking. But it also makes me question that where is this from? Like, what is the source of this information? Like, because I am also kind of thinking that is there these kind of classifications are kind of brainstorming for all of us. So where is the source from? I obviously agree to it that it is not part of the general textbook that we come across. But that's it.
No, and that was my question as well. Like, where is it from? So yes, of course, you'd say, okay, there's the Bible. Okay, then you've got these ancient Ayurvedic texts, and they're not particularly pretty homophobic, all of that. But it's not like homophobia is a new invention. It's not like it was born in the 20th century, right? And homosexuality was not born in the 20th century either. This existed for time immemorial. Ever since human beings have been there, they've had sex with each other irrespective, off and off. But yes, I think what you said about the capitalism and productivity, that's where it comes from, right? The idea of what is useful sexual behavior and what is not. So rape, as horrific as it may sound, is still useful because at least it creates children. Lesbianism is not useful. Not only is it pointless because no babies are made, but it is also deeply sinful because it is two pieces of property choosing to act. When something that is characterized as passive acts, that's very scary, right? So again, same textbook that's around with you somewhere, and also in multiple others that I have soft copies of, I'm happy to send them to you. The definition of sexual intercourse. How would you define sexual intercourse? It's sort of open question. How would you define sexual intercourse? We're running out of time. I'll run through. How would you define sexual intercourse? Anybody? What is it? Seriously? Nobody knows? Deflower. Okay. When flowers get crushed. What else?
I feel the best definition of sexual intercourse is when two flowers meet.
That's our special local Bollywood reference. Yeah, absolutely. It's also, anybody else?
Actually, it's a honeybee over the flower.
The honeybee, yes. You cannot forget sexual intercourse is all about the penetration, so sexual intercourse, according to the textbook, is when a man performs sex upon a woman.
Yikes.
Yeah, and I really, who said yikes? No, I love that definition, it's amazing. As a theater practitioner, I was like, that's so cool. We're stages. I have so much clarity about my body now. I'm the stage for performance. But when you take that, and we're making fun of it, and you're absolutely right, because a lot of this makes sense where it comes from, right? If she's property, and if she's like land or oil or fruit or flowers, then yes, of course, it makes complete sense, right? So it's like the as absurd an idea as saying that two pieces of land fucked each other and created a crop. It doesn't exist. No wonder it's unnatural, right? So the female body does not have agency, and therefore, how dare it, right? Okay, running through. How much time do we have? Sorry. Okay. a great article. I was going to look at this. This was published last year. I'm just going to show that to you because it's actually really, really good. It's called Gender and Medicine by Riddhi Sanghvi. She's a medical student at JJ in Mumbai. Here, Gender Perspectives in Medical Education. And she went through all her textbooks. So my focus was primarily on forensic medicine because I'm interested in the intersection of law and education and medicine. But she's a medical student, she's practicing, so she's in her final year. She went through all her textbooks, right? And she pulled out bits that she felt were particularly blind if it comes to gender or outdated, okay? So stuff like lesbians are masculine in type, so again, going back to the whole, you must have one masculine sense because otherwise how else are you useful or productive? Because of endocrine disturbances or very large clitorises. Practice is usually indulged in by women who are mental degenerates or those who suffer from nymphomania. Again, you're pathologizing, which is very interesting in the context of, we're looking at a medical textbook, but the pathologizing of women who enjoy sex, right? Because how dare you? Right? That's not useful for you to enjoy sex. It's also what upsets me. It really does upset me. I have a brother, he's 2 years younger than me, he's very sweet. And the idea that men are somehow predicated to naturally be violent sexually, I find that incredibly insulting to men. Like, men are not like that. I know some really nice men. My brother is a sweetheart. But I also went to Sophia College in Mumbai, that's where I did my undergraduate degree, and in second year psychology, we were shown a video, this was in this last 10 years, not that long ago. And we were shown a video of a woman who was very upset because her boyfriend wanted to have sex with her. And the voiceover in the video said, you know, this is natural because men have these urges. So it's understandable that he's asking her, but what's really important is that she says no. And she tells him, let's wait for marriage. Because that's her job. To, you know, he can't help himself because he has urges, but she can. And so we were watching this video and we're like, oh wow, that was educational. It was great for social psychology. But it was not an ironic video, it was very real. We weren't meant to take it literally. But as a teenager who had sexual urges, I was very confused. I was like, am I a man? Because I'm interested in sex? It's a bit bizarre, but yeah, maybe I'm mental degenerate. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I'm skipping a lot of stuff, then we have 10 minutes, but I'm happy to send this stuff to you. Newly married, unplanned pregnancy, they can have a medical termination of pregnancy. Yeah.
I know you're running out of time.
Sorry, no.
You know how you said that this happened 10 years back? I feel like it's still relevant today because there's a movie coming out with a pretty famous Bollywood cast. It's got Ananya Pandey, Karthik Aryan, and Bhumi Pednekar, who's otherwise done very respectable movies and roles, but I don't know what, never mind. So even the promo.
People are not black and white.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
yeah.
What I'm coming up to was just like, I'm really surprised. Yeah. But the promos, they haven't even held back till you watch the movie, like to lure the audience into the theatre. They have just gone for the overkill and released this bit in the promo. And Karthik Aryan it's called Pati Patni or Wo. And in the trailer, he's complaining to his friend saying, as a husband, if I don't give sex, I'm something. If I ask for sex and she does say no, then like I'm at fault or something. And if I beg for it and she doesn't give it, like, I don't know, he gives like all of these situations where he's asking, not asking, wants to give, doesn't give. And if she says yes or no, like how it's
very inconvenient for her. Yeah, marital rape is still legal in India, PSA, but yeah. So true. Again, from the textbook, many HIV-infected women choose to become pregnant and continue their pregnancies despite counseling. So this is something we talk about with medical students a lot because so I attended a bunch of ASAP trainings. So she's a youth advocate with ASAP that I mentioned in the beginning, Riddhi. And so they do a lot of stuff about, you know, we live in an age where, as you said so rightly, we have ART medication. And it works. And there's brilliant, you can be completely, like the science has evolved. Brilliant people working in labs all over have created stuff that works, which is amazing. And yet the education system, and this is not just about medicine, this is like in general, doesn't always match up to where we're at otherwise in the world. So it's quite interesting. I'm going to jump back to the... Okay, so that's a great article because she talks about it from medical student perspectives. I think that's very valid and particularly useful. The two-finger test I'm not going to go into because I think everybody already knows about that. Now it was recently outlawed. It is still, however, being taught. So again, the mismatch between the education system and where we're at legally. Johnson & Johnson, this, again, 2017, Johnson & Johnson lost a very historic, from a feminist perspective, historic case in the US. They were sued by a woman because she was implanted with their vaginal mesh device. It's literally what it sounds like chicken coop wire, mesh, that's put in for a really quite common condition called uterine prolapse, right? Very, very common. Lots of women have it, but lots of women live with it. So mesh devices were invented to say, okay, we can pop that back up and put a mesh over there, and it'll be fine. Except that the mesh would disintegrate, and then you have bits of metal all over, and therefore making it impossible to extract, and lead to chronic pain conditions, often paralysis, and often death. So Johnson & Johnson was successfully sued. They lost the case, and it's historic. It's never happened before, right? So that was very cool. So while there was a lot of work, and it's a great documentary on Netflix as well about medical devices, I think there's a disproportionate number of devices that are created for the female body because of a lack of understanding of what the female body is. Especially if you're still sort of like, if you inherited this idea that the female body is the male body is in inverse, then what you're making is not really going to work, right? So another example of that is the STO contraceptive coils. Again, so a few months ago, I was at another conversation doing interviews with medical students, and we were talking about contraceptive methods, and he said, oh, well, this is great, you just implant it like the copper T. I said, well, actually, it runs off and perforates the uterus. There's a lot of research on it, it's banned across Europe, but it's still used in India. So Facebook and medicine is quite interesting. There are a lot of Facebook groups. This is like a fun homework to do, to go home and get on Facebook. And look for women's health groups on Facebook. So there are tons of, like, you find uterine fibroid support groups with like 1 million members. You'll find living with chronic pain after STR. You'll find living with chronic pain after vaginal mesh, etc. So there's lots and lots. Play around, see what you find. But it's great because you've got a lot of women talking in real time about their experiences with the medical system across the world. On the fibroid support group, so I have fibroids, so I'm on a couple of different fibroid support groups. If your women will share their doctor's reports, they will share their conversations with doctors, they'll say, well, I have this and there's no cure apparently, but I want to get a hysterectomy and the doctor won't give me one because I'm of marriageable age and I should be having children right now, right? So they refuse to give me a hysterectomy, and they're saying if I cut out your fibroid, but within 3 months it might just grow back. And that's another lady I interviewed, that's exactly what happened to her. She had a polyps, it was cut out, within 3 months it grew back, we went back into surgery. And so when she asked the nurse, the doctor said, oh, it just happened. And she asked the nurse, why has this happened so soon? And the nurse said, well, the doctor didn't scrape your uterus because she was concerned. This is at Leelavati Hospital in Mumbai, and this was 4 years ago. She said, we didn't scrape your uterus because she did not want any future husband of yours to think that you had an abortion. She was 35 and unmarried, but of course, a future imaginary husband might have such concerns. This is very valid. So the uterus was not scraped. It's really common. Fibroid hysterectomy, if you look up the history of the womb, that's lots of fun stuff there. There's a movie, it's not great artistically, but it's good information-wise. It's called Hysteria. It has Maggie Gyllenhaal. And it talks about hysteria, which is still a prescription that's used across India, especially in rural India, even though it's a completely outdated But yeah, of course, I'm sure you guys can speak to it more than I do because so many of you work in community medicine. And I think everybody knows about the Beed, Maharashtra case of hysterectomies for agricultural work. Okay, I'm just going to end with this one actually. Let's do that. Let's end this. Recently, Tamil Nadu banned the iPill, so you cannot access emergency contraception in Tamil Nadu anymore. So if you're planning to visit Chennai, be warned.
So people take, when friends travel from Bangalore, they take a lot of iPills and
Yeah. So just, be good, like to your friends in Chennai. Carry sow and go, be a good Samaritan. Also biblical reference. And it makes you wonder, like, why this great obsession that's anti-abortion, women accessing contraception, giving out contraceptive pills, there's a lot of this. And this is something that I don't want to get into because there's already a lot of conversation happening about it, especially online. A lot of great campaigns. Hidden Pockets is a Bangalore-based group that's been doing some great advocacy work online. Youth Ki Awaaz, there's Health Over Stigma in Delhi. They're all doing, and all month, because I think it's been all month there's been a campaign, right? So they've been talking about non-judgmental access to contraception and sexual wellness and healthcare. But what's really interesting is in my conversations with doctors who work in rural India, and women who work with NGOs working in healthcare in rural India, was they would come back and talk about the level of obstetric violence that they witnessed. The number of times, so a lady I interviewed recently said to me, well, she said, I can never get it out of my head. We're at this hospital, this government hospital in Bihar, and the woman is in the corridor and she's giving birth, like she's crowning. And so I said to the nurse technician, why is she in the corridor? Why aren't we bringing her in? And she said, oh, well, she's dirty, so she'll mess up the table. So it's best that, she has the baby in the corridor. She's a farm laborer, and so she had the baby in the corridor. It's also very common. Another thing that's very common, she said, what I saw routinely was women who would cry or scream while they're laboring and be told, why are you crying? And I'm translating, but why are you screaming? Why are you crying? You weren't screaming when he put it inside you, were you? So how dare you make a big fuss now? Really common. Happens all over the country. And I was wondering, like, I'm so confused. Do you want us to have babies or not have babies? Because you won't let us get abortions, you won't let us access contraception. If we scream when we're giving birth, that's a big problem. So what are we supposed to do? Just like write me a manifesto? I'm very confused. But then when you start looking at, and there's a lovely series of articles, The Guardian did an in-depth series of investigative reporting on how UK Aid and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funds population control policies in India, and that's where the dichotomy comes from, right? So you're looking at who are the women who are told to have children? What is their economic background? Where do they live? What caste do they belong to? Who are the women who are told not to have children? Who are the women who have the forced hysterectomies, whose tubes are tied when they go in for a routine gynecological procedure, like, I don't know, childbirth? Who are the women who die because their tubes were tied, shoddily, across India all the time? And what is their economic background? What caste do they belong to? So I think there's really fascinating links between, again, come back to the idea of women as property. The female body exists as it does in medicine because it belongs to a state. And you beautifully talked about how productive we are and the capitalist perspective, but there's also the state and the nationalist perspective. And you say, okay, you want to reduce the population, but we want to reduce it in the right way. What we want is less poor Dalits, and what we want is much more like nice urban upper caste children. So let's do that. Let's push this one to have babies and let's push this one not to. So lots of data on this.
Yeah. You said about the case where the patient was made to have her baby outside in the corridor.
Yeah.
I think maybe they didn't have place in a separate labor room where probably infected women infected outside with prolonged labor, and also it could be, which was called a septic labor room. She might have just said a dirty labor room. So maybe they just wanted to keep that. Of course, she didn't have to have the baby on in the corridor, but maybe that was enough.
Perhaps. And I think that's completely valid. I wasn't there. I did not witness this. Yeah. So it's based off of this lady who, yeah, of course, perhaps it is. Right?
Maybe the point is that it wasn't deemed important enough to have that.
Yes.
Is that the point?
Yes.
More than anything else.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Someone else had their hand raised. Yeah.
See, that's not incidental. It's not one. Okay.
Very common.
It's structural.
Yes.
So let's not be naive enough to say that it's just one.
I don't think she was saying that. I don't think she was saying that.
It's women who go to any public hospitals. The doctors are not there.
Sure.
So when they go in the pregnancy, IFA tablets, iron folic acid tablets are not given. So it's not like, oh, it's not just there. It's not there.
I'm just going to interrupt you, sorry. I don't think she was saying that at all. Yeah, I get what you mean. I think she was just talking more about the different reasons and the nuances of the situation, which are very, very important, right? And I said this at the beginning, I'm going to say it again. The idea is not to demonize an industry or practitioners of an industry, because that doesn't get us anywhere. And we're all members of different industries that are equally flawed in our gendered lens as well as many others. The idea is to have a conversation about it. The idea is to say, okay, how do we do better? And what is the future of this body, the female body as we know it, and how do we want to imagine it tomorrow?
And also to see how they feed one off of another. It's
Yes.
such a loop, right?
It's such a loop, and the way it all sort of like marries into, so you've got the state, you've got the capitalist productive enterprise, you've got, which is why Marx and Engels become so important, and then you've got, I'll come back to you, I think we're running out of time, so I just want to run through my slides, and then let's have an open conversation where people who need to leave can, but those who want to stay and have a larger conversation, we can do that, yeah? So shall we do that?
Okay, so we'll take 1 more minute to run through this.
Yeah, we'll just finish that.
But what we should probably do is move the conversation outside because we're up with our time for today.
Yeah, so we'll run through, and then those of you who still want to have a conversation, we can walk outside and continue chatting, but people should have the option to leave, yeah? And, okay, so yes, the larger framework. So much of this is about analyzing the system and where stuff comes from and how it manifests, yeah. So people say, the textbook is not relevant. It's relevant because this is where it lands up. Okay. Protection is oppression. Again, I'm going to really just quickly run over this. I'm going to take you back to the metaphor of the woman's body as land. So virgin land, unfurrowed land, land that is owned, and also often the land that so many other wars are fought over. So quite recently, Section 370 Kashmir. And the reason for instituting that was to save the women of Kashmir. Yeah, Sati. If you look at there's a great paper by an academic called Lata Mani, and if you look at the history of Sati and the actual court documents from the time, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who is in all our history textbooks as this wonderful feminist reformer, argued that according to the Manusmriti, infamous text, it is more fitting for a woman to live out her life in penury as a widow than to die easily and quickly by jumping on the fire. So it was based on that Sati was abolished. It was that this is what is, the colonial state was like, we want to do what's right for the Hindus and their scriptures. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy took a scriptural argument, right? And that's how you have the abolition of Sati. It was not about women maybe don't want to die. So I think those are great examples of the idea of, again, the female body is passive, the female body is earth, the female body is a site of not just performance but of multiple other wars and battles about religion and ideology and national interest, capitalist interest. Another great article, The Egg and the Sperm and Rape Culture, talks about the language that we use when we talk about eggs and sperms. Finally, this is quite on the rise. India is a destination globally for cosmetic gynecology. It's really popular. It's much more affordable in India than in many other places. What that looks like is labiaplasties for the clamshell vagina. So or Barbie vagina is what they're colloquially called. If you look at the sheet that I passed around earlier that looked at the differences between our flowery women A florid woman has outer labia, that's the outer lips of the vulva, that are larger than the inner labia. According to our medical textbook, this is what it looks like. And deflorid women have it's all messed up. So, so it's really common for women to go in and have surgeries to have their vulvas look like that because, big surprise, all vulvas don't look like that. Outer labia not always larger than inner labia. Sometimes inner labia is larger. But it is still a very common medical procedure where they'll say, oh, we'll just do a snip and a cut and, just sort of tuck it back up in because that's not what a vagina is supposed to look like.
There's also what is called the husband stitch.
Yes, of course, the husband stitch, where doctors would do it, episiotomy followed by a husband stitch in order to make the vagina tighter because the man's sexual pleasure is very important.
And it's often done when the woman's still in the after effects of labor. She's tired, she's passed out, she's whatever, and the decision is taken by
the husband. Yeah. So there's lots of conversation on obstetric violence, great writing on that. And I just wanted to end with, again, this is lovely, there's an artist, she's a photographer, and she did a series, she did photographs of 100 penises, and she did another one of 100 pairs of breasts, and then she did 100 vulvas, which is my absolute favorite. Her name is Laura Dodsworth. If you Google her, you will find her website, and she's got lots of... But what's beautiful is to look at those vulvas and see they are not what is described. That is not what the textbook says they look like. And if you look at the pieces that I've seen around, so I don't see outer labia that are way bigger. I don't see little things with annotations saying, I'm the hymen, look after me, I'm your most important part. None of that exists, right? So I think this is something we don't look at that often. Penises are much more visible in culture just because by default they're outside, right? So I think it's always nice to look at vulvas and have that conversation. That's sort of the end. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for being here, for taking your evening, Saturday evening, and being here and participating in the conversation. And I'm going to hand over to Sunana. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ayesha.